Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the High Performance Health Podcast. I'm with David, Scotty, and Colin today. I'm excited for today's topic, guys. We're going to discuss a couple of things quite different in terms of what we're looking at. Weight on the scale should not be the only measure of improvement, and also we're going to discuss the best training routine and what it should look like. So David, I'm going to kind of jump straight in with you. Why do you think so many people massively over prioritize the number on the scale over any other form of measurable improvement on the program?
I think number one, it's very easy to do. I think that's the first thing. Most people got weighing scales. I think it's gathered momentum as well. And not only that, it's kind of, people just traditionally, when they're talking to people in just general conversation, they'll talk about their weight. And it's that stigma that's attached to it, I think, that's become almost like the be all and end all. And that's where it comes about. So it's very easy to measure, but also there is that stigma attached to it that this is what you need to be and nothing else matters.
Yeah, I agree. So Colin, what do you think, what are some of the better ways, do you think, or additional ways to track progress in health and fitness? And also, what do you do yourself, and what do you kind of encourage your clients to look at as well, rather than just obsessing about that number on the scales, whether it's gone up or down?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on their goal, but ultimately you just want as many measurables as possible. So obviously, like you say, weight is one, but if weight is not moving because you've just started taking creatine and you just started lifting weights and suddenly now you're retaining more water, but if you have a reliable way of tracking body fat percentage, maybe that's gone down, your performance has gone up in the gym, your measurements, in terms of chest, arms, hips, waist, all that kind of stuff are all improving in line with the way you want them to improve. And as well as that, pictures. Everyone hates taking pictures because nobody wants to see themselves. They don't want it documented looking how, they're unhappy with how they look, hence why they're maybe wanting to lose weight and they don't want to document it, but that's one of the best things you can have to reflect back on, and you can visually see changes. Other things that people often um, cite, I guess, as things they've noticed an improvement on is how their clothes are fitting. And again, that could be, the shoulders and my sleeves are fitting better because I'm putting on more muscle, or I've had to go down a couple of loops on my belt. Um, so yeah, I think all those kind of things that people don't necessarily take or have appreciation for, if the number on the scales is not moving, even though all of these other improvements are suggesting, you know, what you're doing is working, but they can get too attached to that number on the scale.
And
For
that number
me,
on the scale can't sorry, James, that number on the scale can't take into account those a standard scale can't take into account those body composition changes, right?
Mm.
absolutely. And the same with, even if you've had a really, really successful week on the program and the weight's gone down and you're following the weight. If we Most people mess up their diet at the weekend. They're going to eat a little bit more, aren't they? Their weight's going to go up a little bit. They're going to retain onto a little bit more water. Perhaps they've had a higher amount of salt intake over the weekend as well. That's going to hold on to a bit more water again. And I think as well, it's quite confidence knocking for people. I really encourage a lot of people to stop obsessing about that number. You touched on it there, Colin. For me personally, every year when the sun, in the UK right now, we're going through a little bit of a heat wave. It's like 28, what's that? It's like 80 degrees, I think, outside,
Yeah.
nearly Fahrenheit. And, we're wearing shorts, and you get your shorts out of the cupboard, out of your closet for the first time for 8 months. That's always a great test to see what you've improved. Oh, my shorts are feeling better, my pants are feeling better. I think, and that's such a wonderful confidence booster. How do you then help clients, Scotty, sort of reframe their mindset around that, rather than just obsessing about that number? Because
We-
everybody still does, right?
Yeah, you've got to explain those composition changes. As we discussed only a few minutes ago in the meeting, I've had a client who the scale hasn't really moved. It's kind of bounced up and down for him, but he put on muscle tissue, quite a substantial amount of muscle tissue. And his clothes, as Colin said, were fitting a lot better. He got into a suit that he simply couldn't get into a month and a half ago, and people were passing comment on that. So you've got to take all these little snippets and these little factors and feed it to people who are just getting obsessed with that number. And some people get crazy notions in their head of how much they're going to lose. I've had one guy who was about 180 pounds and he literally wanted to lose 45 off 180, which is a substantial amount. That's 20 kilos, right? It's a substantial weight loss for someone that's not big in the first place.
Yeah.
So you've really got to strip it back to why are you on the program? What do you realistically want to achieve, and how can we achieve it with all these snippets? Because standing on the scale is just one factor.
Sorry, just to jump in as well. I think a lot of people sometimes think I have to lose weight, but really, if I was to say to someone, okay, you could be really, really lean, you could see your abs, you could be, have a decent musculature, but you'd weigh 300 pounds. They go, okay, I'll take that.
Good point.
So the actual weight doesn't matter. It's how you look and how you feel and what your health is like and, how you perform. And so, like I say, when you get attached to a number, like Scotty just used the example there, if someone who wants to lose 40 pounds is like, well, okay, what if you looked how you wanted to look at 170 pounds or 160 pounds? Are you still going to want to lose another 20 pounds? Probably not. So again, it's kind of, again, identifying how I look, how I feel, how I move, how my clothes are fitting. All of those things are more important than a number. Now, obviously, the scales moving can be an indication of progress, but there's so many other factors, and being fixated on having to get to a certain number is just going to hold you back, really.
I think people
I'd add as well. Sorry, James.
No, go for it.
Cardiovascular risk factors as well, like the weight is not. You can be skinny but have a lot of visceral fat, and that's another factor as well. Where your weight lies on your body has got, a strong link with cardiovascular disease. So if you want to look good on the beach, then body fat percentage is probably your best bet to kind of try and get down. If you want to reduce cardiovascular risk, probably your waist to hip ratio or waist circumference is best, visceral fat. If you're doing a cycle ride and you want to kind of lose weight because it's a gravitational sport, then fair enough. I think that's quite a strong link, but it depends on, as Colin just said there, what direction you want to go in to begin with on the program.
I was just going to say that to kind of agree with what you just said, one thing that I notice as well in modern society, people equate thinness with health as well. And I think people, they look great. They look great. Well, actually, if you're somebody that's maybe 15, 20 pounds overweight, but you've dropped another 30 before that, your waistband has come down, your cardiovascular fitness has gone up, your VO2 max has improved, perhaps your biceps have gotten bigger, your quads have gotten bigger. You are in a much, much healthier state than that person. And that's something that I always try and impress upon. My wife will be walking down the street, it's like, wow, she looks amazing. I'm like, does she? She just looks like a breath of wind would knock her over, and I really try and impart that on people. Don't equate thinness, overly thin with health.
Because thin and lean aren't the same thing either, right? People get those two words mixed up. They think thin and lean are the same thing, but that's not the same either.
Exactly. Lean just means having how can daily weight fluctuations then do you think affect motivation, and what should clients kind of understand about that? And if you are getting on the scales and you're seeing that weight go up and down, Scotty, how would you kind of encourage, the factors that can play a role in seeing that number on the scales go up and go down on a daily basis?
Well, if you're going to do it, you've got to do it under the same circumstances as well. It's no good spending Monday and Tuesday weighing in at 5 a.m. when you get up and you've been to the bathroom, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday you weigh in at 10 o'clock at night when you've had a full day of eating, drinking, and activity. You've got to get your circumstances right, if you like, for weighing in. That's the big one for starters. It's got to be the same thing all the time if you're going to weigh in regularly like that, or track for 7 days or whatever.
I think the way that I look at this, I don't know about you guys, I say to my clients, weigh yourself Monday through Sunday, if that's what you choose to do. I don't massively encourage a daily weighing, to be honest with you. I quite like a weekly weighing. Weigh yourself Monday through Sunday if you want, and just take the average and have that number. And then the next week, do it again every day, take the average and just see that number come down or come up. That's going to give you a much better gauge on how successful you're being on that program. The same with, when you guys do your check-in calls, those graphs, the weight loss graphs, I'm a big fan of, viewing somebody through a weight loss graph. Yes, we all know that progress isn't going to be linear. Some people's progress looks a little bit like a theme park ride, but as long as you're constantly seeing that downward trajectory, we are making progress from a weight loss perspective as a number on the scales. Um, how do how do sleep quality, mood, and energy levels also reflect improvements in health, David?
Massively, because it's all linked hormonally. Sleep is definitely going to be a big one. Cortisol levels are high, stress levels, and then you're going to have disrupted sleep. You can't train. The environment that you're in is not going to be good enough to kind of adapt scientifically to training. So, these are all factors that you need to really be looking at when you kind of put together and maybe a diary for yourself in training, not just looking at how you're performing actually in the gym or outside when you go for a run, but how was my sleep? How was my stress levels? How was my, mental state? And then you can maybe start to build some kind of patterns together to see actually that could be the factor that's affecting that one. And that's really good practice for anybody who's training. It's not just a singular, it's always a holistic approach to help you, reach your goal. And some things really hold you back, especially sleep. We spoke about that a lot on other podcasts. But sleep is massively important because you don't adapt to training during the session. You adapt to it when you're recovering. That's when you're rebuilding muscle tissue and adapting. So it's just very key.
I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that people fall down at is exactly that. People obsess about going to the gym. There was a guy that used to be a member of the gym that me and Scott used to work at. Do you remember Raj?
Oh yeah.
Little tiny little Sri Lankan guy. He was unbelievably shredded. He 5'5". He was in the gym every single day. But I worked in the gym for 11 years. He was there. He'd go on holiday. He'd find a gym to train at every single day because he was so obsessed by the fact, because he was a small guy, he felt that taking 2 or 3, 4 days off was going to lose all the progress that he'd made over that 10, 12 years, however long he'd been training for. So to sort of come back to your point there, David, to me as well, I think the most important tool that we have in terms of progression is sleep. And I really put that with my clients at the top of that list. Make sure you know your sleep, and it's going to have such significant impacts in terms of how you will continue to progress, not only from a weight loss perspective, from a body fat perspective, how your body deals with stress. It's going to improve your overall functioning of your immune system. It's going to help you build lean muscle. It's going to have significant impact on how efficiently your body metabolizes fat as well. Let's talk about kind of nutrition and strength training then and how that affects body composition, even if the scales aren't budging. Colin.
From what perspective in terms of
From terms of
specific nutrition?
if we're not seeing the number on the scale change, but you're lifting weights, you're eating clean.
Yeah, again, as long as you're so like you say, or like we started this conversation with, and as David pointed out, why people are often obsessed with the number on the scales. It's the most easy way to measure progress because it's very accessible and it's very absolute. This is how much I weigh. Whereas it's a little bit harder to weigh what muscle mass I have, how much of my weight is water weight, how much is body fat, how much of that fat is visceral fat. And so that's a little bit harder to know. But something that is very absolute is my performance in the gym improving? Have I lifted more weights than I lifted last week? Am I doing more reps? Am I doing more sets? Am I doing more weight? Or if it's cardiovascularly, am I improving my times or whatever it is? That again, they're very clear indications of progress. So again, if I'm hitting my protein target, I'm hitting all my workouts, and I'm progressing in all the workouts, but maybe the number on the scales is not moving, well, it's pretty good indication then I must be improving something. Obviously, initially improving your strength is more of a skill acquisition. But if you're even intermediate, it gets to a point of if I'm lifting more, I must be putting on some amount of muscle again if I have a sufficient level of protein intake. So my scales isn't moving, but I'm feeling better, I'm looking better, my clothes are fitting better, without me measuring my, getting a DEXA and actually having a breakdown of my body fat percentage, my lean mass, my bone density, all this is pretty good indication that I'm improving my muscle mass and probably improving my body fat percentage. Losing some body fat but increasing muscle mass, which is maybe leveling off my overall weight.
Yeah, of course.
And that's an important one about Colin just said about bone density. Your skeleton gets heavier when you resistance train. It's a massive thing, and your skeleton's responsible for a lot of immune function as well. And people never talk about the skeleton, right? But it's the thing that everything's attached to.
I think
Big
the DEXA
bones.
scan, for most
Yeah,
people who want a
DEXA's.
who's got a body composition goal, the DEXA scan is such a good, measurement. It's the gold standard. It's the one that you should be looking at, I think. I think it's a bit counterproductive to kind of think that you're going to, try and change your health, your body composition, but then just measure yourself on the scales. What type of measurement is that in terms of what your goals actually are? You need the right measurements to indicate where you've gone. And I think that the DEXA scan is, I say that to almost everyone on the program, get a DEXA scan. You want to achieve this. This is how we'll show you you've achieved it. And it's, a few $100. Find a local radiologist, whether it is Google Map. I do it for some of my clients. This is where you should go. There's your place to go and get your scan, and we can look at the results.
Yeah,
And cheaper than a few $100. I got a client, he got
Yeah.
four for $150. So one a quarter.
it's excellent.
Oh, it must be in a bit of a funny area where my ones then.
Do any of you guys want to share like a sort of a success story, a client success story, where the weight on the scale hasn't really kind of reflected their real progress, their real life progress?
I mean, David Doherty recently he's quite small in terms of the guy he was mentioning. He's about 160. He's got down to 150, but his body composition has really changed. His strength training is gone up exponentially, really strong. And he does do a regular body composition test. And you can kind of see the lean mass has almost kind of stayed the same or even gone up a little bit. He's dropped a little bit and he's down at 150, but it's a really fit 150. So that's been really good. A lot of people that are kind of 250, 275, they've got quite a lot of muscle mass anyway. You
Yeah.
want to see the body percentage change, the body fat percentage, just to show, this is you've got the muscle. Just keep that, retain it, and just lose the body fat percentage number. So yeah, it's just an imperative part of the program. I think getting them stats, their measurements.
What was his tool then? What was his main tool in terms of getting his weight as low as he did? Because that is a low weight to get down to.
He does a lot of zone 2 running, so
Yeah.
he's obviously very efficient at metabolizing fat. I think he was already like that before we even trained together. So I just continued that, and then we just kind of said, okay, we're just going to kind of be in more of a deficit, but we're going to do some good quality strength training to maintain or even put on a little bit of more muscle mass. And with that little deficit there, we should kind of change our body composition. But yeah, he's got a good aerobic base, which I think is good for everything, really. Even strength training, if you've got a good aerobic capacity, you're going to recover quicker and do better quality training. So it's always great when you get a guy like that. You know that their quality of training is going to be good before you even start because he's got that aerobic base. So yeah, it was great to work with him.
That sounds excellent. Okay, guys, moving on to topic 2 then, the best training routine and what it should look like. Now, I know that's a little bit of a generalized question in terms of we're going to discuss people's goals, what they're looking to achieve, but what does an ideal training routine look like, do you think, for kind of an average person just seeking overall health and well-being? Scotty?
Well, I was going to say a good routine is what you have available to you where you are and based on your orthopedics. But I'd say as long as you cover some big basics, so a pull, some kind of lift, some kind of carry, some kind of drag, some type of hinge or squat movement, depending on your orthopedics. As long as you cover the movement basics and you're getting some decent cardio, whether that's zone 2, zone 3, whatever, as long as you can get that in a nutshell, you're probably most of the way there. After that, it comes down to environmental factors, equipment, that kind of stuff. It goes out saying if someone's got yoga mats and bands, then you're not going to be able to do back squats and bench press. So you have to factor all that in. But if you can get your basic movements, you're pretty much onto a winner.
When you mention orthopedics, just for everybody listening, just give me a little bit more of an explanation as to what you mean.
injury history, joints, muscles, bones, tendons, anything that may inhibit you from doing something.
Yeah. And what do you think then, Colin, are kind of the non-negotiables of a good training program?
There has to be some, well, one of the what you said there, I guess initially is it's quite a broad question in terms of, someone who just wants to be overall healthy. One thing I try to stress to everyone at the beginning, and also then, we need to review it probably every quarter, is you need to have something that's a little bit more tangible than just a little, want to get overall healthy. Like I need something measurable that I can now be specific as to what I'm doing and be more intentional, and then be more focused. And with that, you're going to put more effort into what you're doing. So that way, obviously, then there's no point in me writing a program for someone if it doesn't align with their goals. So it needs to be specific to what they're looking to achieve. And then obviously just needs to be progression built into it as well. If you're just constantly doing the same thing, there's no progression in it. There's no adaptation in it. Then you're probably not going to make any progress. But ultimately, just as a broad, overview of that, as long as they're doing something that's intensity, moderate to vigorous intensity, and you're doing that for around 150 minutes a week, and then maybe you have a step goal as well, just to be active every day, and then obviously on top of the nutrition on top of that, getting a sufficient amount of protein, you can't really go too far wrong until, okay, maybe you have now a specific goal that you want to tailor it more towards that.
When you're building out a training program for somebody, like for me in my mind, my non-negotiable for me, and to be honest with you, for a lot of my clients would be like Scotty said, you said a push and a pull. For me, it would be like a bench, pull up, squat, and some kind of then, unilateral movement. What is there a specific kind of go-to model that you would have for each one of your clients in terms of what you want them to get good at and what you want them to focus when it comes to kind of big compound lifts?
For me, I mean, yes, all those things you just mentioned, that is ideal, but it doesn't have to be a bench press. It just needs to be some type of pull. It doesn't have to be a squat. It just needs to be some sort of a squat movement. Um, it just needs to be balanced and well-rounded. Again, depending on if they then come to me with a specific goal of I want to actually grow my chest by a couple of inches, it's like, okay, we'll probably do a little bit more pushing exercises. Um, so yeah, ultimately though, for a lot of the guys, I think the problem they've run into is they've never found anything that they've stuck to over long term. And so ultimately that's, as long as you're doing something, that's better than you doing, something, a lot for a couple of weeks and then not doing anything for a couple of weeks. So like we need to just find something that you will stick to. And then we need obviously, again, for the majority of people, a nice combination or a nice balance, again, depending on their goal, of resistance training and cardiovascular training to
Yeah.
I think
complement
that's
each other.
important as well. What Colin was talking about goals, because sometimes their goals will be aligned with something realistic, but sometimes people will have goals that are completely irrelevant to what is the problem with their health. For example, in a structured program, they could be wanting to build their chest up more, but actually they're doing chest all the time and they really need to actually develop probably the pulling exercises. So you've got to look at what their goals are and say, well, you know what? No, that's not the right way to go about it. We've got to reassess your goals and be realistic in what you're going to achieve and maybe balance that out. So I think it's, the goal setting part of it is so important as well, because some people, as the gentleman you and Scotty knew, James, in the gym, he's probably got this goal in his mind to keep training every single day. But actually, recovery periods in his program is probably the best way forward.
Yeah.
So, what is the actual best way forward for someone? And the well-rounded structure of a program could be very different from someone else based on what they've got in their own mind. And that's why I think it's just important to discuss them things at the very beginning.
So David, what do you
Yeah,
think
I
then?
think, can I just jump in on that? Just
Yeah, of course.
I think that's so important. Just to, yeah, what people sometimes say is their goal doesn't align with what they want to do or what they are doing. And it's like, well, one thing has to give here. Either you need to change the goal so it aligns with what you enjoy doing, or you need to accept, okay, then I'm going to have to do something else if I actually want to achieve this goal. And like you say, trying to make sure that they're clear on that, that it's not a case of, okay, we can achieve your goal by continually doing the thing that you want to do. And it's like they're not going to align. And so we need to make sure that that's very clearly understood, and we're on the same page then when we then build a program for them.
Yeah,
And
people have got egos, haven't they? They kind of want to achieve. Everyone's got it. They all want to do something that, oh, that person's done it, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to run a marathon in under 3 hours, or I'm going to do this. I'm going to look the best. And you just got to look at it and think, you know what? Let's just take it step by step and set something more realistic and kind of, it's difficult because you're fighting against that sometimes as a coach, and we all have it. We all have it where we're, speaking to people about really what do you really want, and kind of what we've got to do here in order to get there, and kind of building it properly. So yeah.
yeah, I get that all the time. People really don't know what they want. I want to climb a mountain. I want to run 100 meters in 10 seconds, but I also want to get my bench press as heavy as I possibly can. It's like, okay, I'd say, yeah, that's a great way to start building out a training program. What, Scott, progressive overload. Talk to me a little bit about that in terms of building out a training program for somebody, and how do you kind of build that into a routine, and how do you encourage that? Are you looking at weight volume? Are you looking at set volume? Are you looking at rep volume? Are you looking at all three?
Well, it depends on the trainee. If you've got someone, I've got a guy at the minute who's very advanced. So for him, he's kind of been doing a lot of reps, and he wants to focus more on strength. So for him, progressive overload would be to do less repetitions, but keep the volume high and then focus on load over time. So we're really trying to bump up the amount of weight he uses for each set that he does. For other people at the beginning, for someone coming in fresh, I've never been in front of them. I've never given them a dumbbell. I've never seen them do anything. So you set the baseline reps and sets, and then they go and they practice the sessions out. And then from there, you're looking at the numbers they do. You're taking rate of perceived exertion, how they feel off the Borg scale, and then from there, you're trying to build over time. So I would like someone to not mess with the reps and sets too much early on. Stick to that number, and then build load into those reps and sets so we can find a true number rather than going 312s or 315s or 320s. Then it starts to get a little bit messy and you can't take an accurate approach. Stick to the reps and sets for a good month and then build the weight into that, especially if you're a beginner.
And when
One
you're
other point
building
I'd
out
like
a
to make on
program,
that, sorry, is just when you're talking about people sticking to the reps, one thing I would love for people to stick more to is the rest, because oftentimes people try to just speed through a workout and you're not resting long enough, so your reps are dropping off or your strength's dropping off, and it makes it really difficult to progress. And that's what we need to have in it. So make sure that you are actually sticking to the rest periods as well.
Yeah, when people go like 10 reps, 9 reps, 4, or 10, 9, 3, and it's done, right? It's over, it's finished. It's
Or they
shot.
just get stuck on a weight that they can't progress anymore.
Yeah.
It's like because you're not allowing enough recovery in between. So that's really important, I think.
this is a whole kind of topic of another podcast idea, but yeah, you're right. You know, the benefits of rest and understanding the importance. And I think that's where a lot of people fall down on this program when it comes to, you can see two people, one person can make unbelievable changes. I've got a person in my mind, and other people can be on the program for 18 months. And you think, you've not progressed like I would have expected you to, yet you're putting in RPE scales of 8, 9, and 10 on a weekly basis. But your training sessions are only taking you 25 minutes for a program that should actually take 60. You know, how much you're rushing through it. And I think for anybody listening to this, you know, the importance, as you said there, Colin, to rest is massively, massively, massively important. You shouldn't look at your daily tasks as a tick box. Yeah, just needed to check that off, and I can whittle my training session down to 15 minutes by almost ending it up, making it more like an anaerobic circuit, rather than actually what you're trying to do is build some lean muscle.
And just like load fits the exercise, right? Rest fits the exercise. Barbell back squats require at a given load require a lot more rest than wrist curls would, for example. It's the same with the load itself on the exercise, right? It's different. You could have in your session, you could have 8 exercises, and each of those eight exercises could have a slightly different rest period built into them.
Yeah, of course. It's a topic we probably could discuss, I think, at length forever, to be honest with you. Kind of my final question for you guys. Again, keeping it fairly generic, just because there's obviously a lot of people listening who have lots of different kind of goals and what they're looking to achieve. But if you only had 3 days a week to build out a training program for somebody, what would you prioritize on their program? And let's focus a little bit more on the resistance side rather than on the cardiovascular. David, I'll ask you.
I think you'd have to go full body for a
Yeah.
start. You wouldn't want to sort of try and split a 3 day a week workout, but you'd have to implement some type of metabolic stuff in there as well. So I'd probably say sort of full body. If it was just a general push pull, hip dominant, knee dominant, and then maybe looking at some core. And then if you really wanted to work some isolation movements, you could. And then maybe some sort of metabolic circuit. And then maybe one of the days out of them three, maybe a little bit more prolonged endurance based cardiovascular, maybe a circuit. So you do maybe a full body one and a full body two. And then the third session will be maybe a cardio based circuit with sort of more prolonged efforts, maybe on a resistance, a machine, a cardiovascular machine. Something like that would be my kind of general idea, really.
My preferred training session is a little bit like that. I don't get to the gym a huge amount, because I'm focusing on a lot more sort of long distance running and stuff, but it would be push pull legs, and then I would finish off with some kind of energy system development. I'm a big fan of something like an assault bike at the moment, or the ski erg. I think they're absolutely fantastic. Um, awesome,
What do you guys
guys.
Yeah.
think of doing the metabolic bit at the beginning or the end? Because I'm interested, because I've always kind of contemplated whether that should be the start or the end phase of a resistance. You
Depends how tired you
always,
want to be, right? You can
yeah,
control fatigue. I mean, a great way. I like flushing, upper lower. So an upper body exercise followed by a lower body exercise, flush it
yeah,
out, and then my favorite thing, I got a slam ball, like a 20 kilo slam ball. Just slam ball for reps. Slam ball for a 20 kilo,
yeah.
45 pound slam ball for reps. Sometimes before the workout. Phenomenal.
Yeah. So you reckon after James is best, like in terms of the cardiovascular effort, if you're going to do, say, a 20-minute on the bike at the end of a full body?
For me personally, but that's purely personal. Yeah, I would always
Yeah.
encourage people.
How
I
about you,
would
Colin?
always.
What do you go for?
Yeah, I think you're right in that there are different perspectives on it. I think if it's quite low intensity, that's not a bad thing. If okay, I need to do this, so I might as well actually incorporate that as part of my warm up as well. So if I can do it, it doesn't require, it doesn't fatigue me too much. Then I can go into doing the resistance after it. Whereas if I'm doing something that's high intensity and then after that I'm trying to go and do a complex movement like some sort of a squat, or if it's like an overhead press or something, I don't want to be doing that whilst I'm fatigued. So I definitely would do them first, and then I can do the high intensity work after. So yeah, it
Yeah.
depends on the cardio, but for sure, there's merits to doing before or after.
I definitely wouldn't want to do something like a Norwegian 4x4 and then go and start heavy back squatting afterwards, personally.
No,
But
but
I'm
if
willing to try.
you're intermediate and you know when to knock it on the head and then move on, then it's legit.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining today. Thanks everyone for listening, and I'll see you all next time. All the best,
Cheers.
guys. Take care. See you
Nice.
soon.
Cheers, guys. Bye bye.
Bye bye.